Okay, so what we want to do is to be able to see the effect of a tax in terms of total surplus. Okay, in order for us to do this, though, the first thing we have to do is establish what the total surplus is in equilibrium. That is, when we don't have a tax. Okay, so the total surplus in equilibrium, in order to be able to find what this number is, given these particular numbers, is we need to start with a graph. Okay, so we draw our usual demand and supply curve, okay, in the sense that the demand is downward sloping and the supply is upward sloping. Okay, so we draw our demand and then we draw our supply. Okay, and so what we can do is we can use the numbers in this table to be able to figure out, okay, some of the information for this graph. Okay, so the first thing is where is the vertical intercept for the demand curve? Okay, it's basically at this price where we have what? Well, we have the quantity demanded equal to 0, and we see the price that goes with that is $8. Okay. Another thing we can find is here at this point, that's the quantity demanded when the price is 0. So when the price is 0, we see the quantity demanded is 16. Okay. All right, and the other thing we can also find is the equilibrium. And so which particular points are these? This is where quantity demanded equals quantity supply. Okay, and so it's going to be represented by these numbers here. Okay, so we have $4 for the equilibrium price and 8 for the equilibrium quantity. Okay, so now what we want to do is to be able to find the consumer surplus. Okay, so to be able to find the consumer surplus, what we first have to do is to remember, well, the consumer surplus is supposed to be the area below the demand curve and above the price that buyers pay. Okay, so in that case, what do we have? We have it represented by this area here. Okay, so that's our consumer surplus. Okay, so the consumer surplus in the equilibrium, okay, in terms of the numbers, well, we basically have the area of a triangle. The area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. Okay, so it's going to be what? It's going to be 1/2 times what is the base quantity, which is 8, times the height, which is 8 minus 4. Okay, and so what do we end up with? We end up with 4 times 4, which is 16. Okay. All right. So the next thing we want to find is what is the producer surplus. Okay. And remember, the producer surplus is the area below the price sellers receive, but above the supply curve. Okay, and so that's going to be represented by this area here. Okay, so in terms of the area, numerically, again, it's going to be 1/2 because it's a triangle, 1/2 base times height, so 1/2 times 8 times 4 minus 0. Okay, and so what do we end up with? We end up with the same thing again. We end up with 16. Okay, another component of the total surplus is the tax revenue. And in this case, there is no tax, so there's no revenue. So in this case, what is our total surplus? So what do we have as our total surplus? It's basically 16 plus 16 plus 0. And so we get $32. Okay?